The 1980s was a decade of extreme experimentation. The fads of the 1980s weren't just fleeting trends, they were cultural landmarks that defined the era. If you didn't have the latest gadget, accessory, or hairstyle, you weren't just out of touch, you were practically invisible. It was the decade of go big or go home, and oh boy did we go big. In this video, we'll revisit some of the craziest fads of the 1980s, which are sure to trigger some fond memories. Jelly shoes. We'll be kicking things off with jelly shoes. These were colorful, squishy sandals that managed to bridge the gap between toy and footwear. If you grew up in the 80s, chances are you owned a pair or three of these funky shoes. And if you didn't, well, you definitely knew someone who did. So, where did these strange plastic shoes come from? Jelly shoes, or simply jellies as they were usually called, were first produced by a Brazilian company called Grindin Shoe Corporation. They were made from PVC plastic and came in just about every color imaginable, from translucent pink to glittery silver. But why were jellies loved so much? Was it the fact that they were waterproof? Or was it simply the thrill of wearing shoes that looked like they'd been made out of candy? Either way, jelly shoes became a symbol of 80s fashion. They were the go-to footwear for the summer, perfect for a day at the beach, hanging out at the mall, or even just running through sprinklers in your backyard. Will jelly shoes ever become mainstream again? Well, considering how many 80s trends have resurfaced in recent years, yes, we're looking at you, high-waisted jeans. It wouldn't be surprising. Big hair. On the topic of trends, if there's one image that perfectly depicts the 1980s, it's big hair. Not just any big hair, the kind that defied gravity and made you look like you'd stuck your finger in an electrical socket, but in the most glamorous way possible. Men and women in the 80s embraced the philosophy that bigger is better. When it came to their hairdos, and Aquanet hairspray was the magical elixir that made it all possible. The roots of this trend can be traced back to several key influences. First, you had the rise of bands like Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, and Poison, whose voluminous teased manes became iconic. It wasn't just about the music, it was about the look. These bands practically trademarked the idea of long, wild hair, often paired with leather jackets and eyeliner. That was essential to the rock star persona. And then, of course, there was Aquanet. This hairspray was legendary for its ability to hold even the most intricate hairdo in place. Big hair wasn't just a style, it was a statement. It said, I'm here and you're going to notice me. Of course, maintaining this gravity-defying look wasn't easy. It required a toolkit of hair products, a lot of patience, and a tolerance for frequent hair washing to remove the layers of sticky hairspray that had built up over the day. Still, for many, it was worth it. Big hair was more than just a trend. It was a rite of passage for anyone trying to fit in with the cool kids. Sony Walkman. If the 1980s had a soundtrack, chances are it was coming from a Sony Walkman. Before the Walkman, music was a communal experience. Whether it was families gathered around massive stereo systems or teenagers blasting their favorite tunes from boomboxes, listening to music meant sharing it with the people around you, whether they liked it or not. However, when Sony released the first portable cassette player in 1979, everything changed. With those iconic foam-covered headphones, the world faded away, and it was just you and your favorite tunes. The popularity of the Walkman skyrocketed in the 80s, and by the mid-decade, it was a must-have accessory. Whether you were into Madonna, Prince, or The Clash, a Walkman allowed you to carry your music with you in a way that was revolutionary for the time. Of course, our discussion of the Walkman will be incomplete without acknowledging its role in the aerobics craze in the 80s. It allowed you to shut out the world, even if just for a moment, and enjoy music in a way that had never been possible before. Leg warmers. Speaking of aerobics, leg warmers are the perfect description of 1980s fashion accessories. These tubular, footless socks were the height of style during the decade. And no, you didn't have to be a dancer to rock them. They were worn with leggings, jeans, skirts, pretty much anything really. The popularity of leg warmers can be traced back to two cultural phenomena that dominated the early 80s: Flashdance and aerobics. Flashdance was iconic, but honestly, it was the fashion that stole the show. The actress performed dance routines in leg warmers, inspiring a generation of women to don the comfy accessory. At the same time, the fitness craze was taking over America. Leg warmers became an essential part of any workout ensemble, usually paired with leotards, headbands, and neon spandex. Of course, as quickly as they rose to fame, leg warmers fell out of fashion by the late 80s. But like many 80s fads, they had brief rebirths over the years. Today, they're mostly seen in retro-themed workouts or as part of a Halloween costume. But let's be real, who wouldn't secretly love to bust out a pair of slouchy, colorful leg warmers for old time's sake? Parachute pants. In the 1980s, parachute pants weren't just any pants. They were made of ripstop nylon, the same material used for parachutes. These pants were lightweight, comfortable, and of course covered in zippers. They became popular in breakdancing culture as they were perfect for showing off your moves, thanks to their loose, baggy fit that provided maximum flexibility. MC Hammer may have put his twist on baggy pants in the early 90s, but in the 80s, parachute pants were the real deal. Sure, they weren't the most practical clothing choice, but practicality wasn't the point. They were all about style, and in the 80s, nothing was more important than that. Rubik's Cube. If there's one object that perfectly captures the combination of frustration and fascination that characterized the 80s, it's the Rubik's Cube. This brightly colored six-sided puzzle was invented by Hungarian architect Erno Rubik in 1974. But it wasn't until the early 80s that the world fully caught Rubik's Cube fever. It became an instant sensation, and for a while, it seemed like everyone was obsessed with solving this annoying puzzle. The Rubik's Cube is simple in concept but devilishly difficult in execution. The goal is to align all 6 faces of the cube so that each side is a solid color. Easy, right? Wrong. For most people, the Rubik's Cube was quite the challenge. You could twist and turn those little colored squares for hours and still be no closer to a solution than when you started. But for those who could solve it, they were practically superheroes. Solving the Rubik's Cube became a status symbol, especially if you could do it quickly. Rubik's Cube fever swept the globe in the 80s, and while the craze eventually cooled down, the puzzle itself has never really gone away. Today, Rubik's Cubes are still popular, and new generations continue to be fascinated and frustrated by this iconic 80s challenge. Boombox. In the 1980s, no party was complete without a boombox. These portable stereo systems were big, loud, and powerful enough to turn any street corner into a dance floor. Boomboxes became an essential part of hip-hop culture and street life, symbolizing independence and self-expression. The larger the boombox, the better. Some were so massive they required multiple D batteries to operate, but that didn't matter. Carrying one around on your shoulder was a badge of honor. Today, we have tiny Bluetooth speakers, but nothing compares to the sheer presence of a boombox. It wasn't just about the music, it was about being seen and heard. Slap bracelets. If you were a kid in the 80s, chances are you had at least one slap bracelet in your collection. And you probably remember the thrill of snapping that thin strip of metal onto your wrist with a satisfying slap. These deceptively simple accessories were invented by a Wisconsin shop teacher, Stuart Anders, in 1983. Slap bracelets were made of a flexible metal band covered in colorful fabric or plastic. To wear one, you simply held it straight, then slapped it against your wrist, where it would instantly curl into place and become a bracelet. It was addictive. The more dramatic the slap, the better. Kids would spend hours snapping and re-snapping these little accessories. What made slap bracelets so irresistible was their blend of fashion and function. They weren't just something to wear, they were toys that you could also play with. Kids would trade them, collect them, and naturally, see who could slap them onto their wrist faster. Even though slap bracelets disappeared almost as quickly as they appeared, they've never completely vanished from the collective memory. In fact, they've had multiple comebacks over the years, usually in the form of safer, more well-constructed versions. But for those of us who grew up in the 80s, the original slap bracelets will always hold a special place in our hearts. Cabbage Patch Kids. Now, Cabbage Patch Kids weren't just dolls. They were a national obsession. Released in 1983, these soft-bodied dolls with chubby cheeks and yarn hair came with their own adoption certificates, and each one was unique. Parents went wild trying to get their hands on them, leading to chaotic holiday shopping scenes where people were literally fighting over the last doll on the shelf. The Cabbage Patch craze reached a fever pitch, with millions of dolls sold worldwide. Every kid wanted one, and if you didn't get one, you probably never forgot that Christmas disappointment. Though they weren't the most aesthetically pleasing dolls, they were charming in their own strange way, and owning one meant you were part of the cool kids. Garbage Pail Kids. In 1985, the 80s gave us a gift that was loved by kids and hated by parents. Garbage Pail Kids. These trading cards featured hideous, exaggerated characters with pun-filled names, and they were an instant hit among children everywhere. If Cabbage Patch Kids were the sweet, wholesome dolls that everyone adored, Garbage Pail Kids were their rebellious, gross-out cousins, the ones you weren't supposed to like but couldn't help loving. The concept behind Garbage Pail Kids was simple. They were parodies of the popular Cabbage Patch Kids dolls, but instead of cute, rosy-cheeked babies, these characters were hideous, messy, and often just plain disturbing. From Atom Bomb, who had a mushroom cloud exploding out of his head, to Leaky Lindsay, whose face was covered in snot. The Garbage Pail Kids appealed to the darker, more mischievous side of childhood humor. Each Garbage Pail Kid card came with a unique character and a clever, often disgusting name. The artwork was detailed, colorful, and unapologetically crude. Kids couldn't get enough of them. They would trade the cards on the playground, comparing collections and competing to get the rarest or most offensive cards. Meanwhile, teachers and parents were horrified, with many schools banning the cards altogether due to their disruptive nature and questionable taste. The success of Garbage Pail Kids wasn't just limited to trading cards. The brand expanded into other merchandise, including stickers, clothing, and even a short-lived animated TV show. Even today, the cards are highly collectible, with some rare ones worth serious money. Valley Girls. Valley Girls weren't just a subculture, they were an attitude. Born in the malls of the San Fernando Valley in California, Valley Girls were known for their exaggerated speech patterns and love of shopping. But it wasn't just about how they talked. Valley Girls had a distinct style. Think pastel sweaters, miniskirts, and perfectly feathered hair. It was a look that mixed preppy with glamorous, and it spread far beyond California. The Valley Girl craze became a national obsession, and for a while you couldn't turn on the TV without hearing someone say, "For sure." Swatch Watches. Swatch watches were the wrist accessory of the 1980s. Launched in 1983, they combined Swiss precision with bold, colorful designs that instantly became a hit. Unlike traditional watches, Swatch watches were affordable, which meant you could collect multiples and switch them out to match your outfit. Or better yet, stack them on one wrist for maximum effect. With a seemingly endless variety of designs, Swatch watches appealed to everyone. You could choose neon colors, funky patterns, or even clear plastic cases that showed off the inner workings of the watch. Swatch became famous for its playful designs, which captured the spirit of the 1980s. Whether you wore 1 or 10, having a swatch on your wrist meant you were at the height of fashion. My Little Pony. For kids of the 1980s, My Little Pony was the ultimate collectible. Introduced in 1983, these colorful, plastic ponies with brushable manes and tails quickly became a beloved toy. Each pony had its unique design and personality, making it easy for kids to trade, collect, and create entire pony adventures. What made My Little Pony so special was how customizable they were. With rainbow colors and magical symbols on their flanks, known as cutie marks, each pony felt unique. The franchise soon expanded to include animated TV shows, movies, and mountains of merchandise. Whether you were brushing your pony's mane or setting up a pony kingdom in your bedroom, these toys sparked endless hours of imaginative play. Trapper Keeper. If you were a student in the 1980s, owning a Trapper Keeper was essential. These colorful, oversized binders weren't just for keeping your schoolwork organized. They were a fashion statement. With their Velcro closures and vibrant, often futuristic designs, Trapper Keepers made even homework look cool. Trapper Keepers had pockets for pens, papers, and secret notes. They came in a variety of themes, everything from neon, geometric patterns to adorable kittens. And owning the latest design was a mark of validation. Not only were Trapper Keepers practical, but they also made you feel like you were on top of the world at school. They were the ultimate status symbol for any 80s kid. Pac-Man. No discussion of 80s fads is complete without Pac-Man. Released in 1980, Pac-Man wasn't just a video game, It was the video game of the 80s. The simple addictive gameplay had players guiding a yellow pie-shaped character through a maze, gobbling up dots and avoiding colorful ghosts. It seemed simple, but could quickly become an obsession. By the mid-80s, Pac-Man had become more than just an arcade game. There was Pac-Man merchandise, a hit single, Pac-Man Fever, a cartoon series, and even a breakfast cereal. It seemed like the little yellow guy had taken over the whole world. Pac-Man wasn't just a game. It was a symbol of the booming arcade culture of the 80s, where quarters were spent and high scores were chased. Which of these fads is your favorite? Let us know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe and like it. See you in the next one.